So real quick, this is the crime funnel. The crime funnel is important because it explains the real pattern of manipulators and people involved in serial crime. And that what it means is at the top, there's a whole lot of crime. At the bottom, where the funnel ends, that is the amount of people involved. So what it means is that a lot of people commit a majority of the crime. An example is when I was involved in crimes against children, a lot of the pedophiles I hunted and ultimately a lot of them I got locked up in prison. These people had committed 250, 350, sometimes 500 different acts. So it's why the reason it's so important is that if you can get certain people identified, then just taking them out of the system or identifying them might drop crime rates or victimization rates by 50 or 70%. So this is why it's important. All right, next slide. So what I'm going to teach you now is the theory of the triad of seriality. And what you can do is you notice this often in children. It starts at age 7. It's kind of controversial, but it was taught by me when I was in my Homeland Security profiling classes, as well as when I actually went out and started working with the state. And what it is these are problematic behaviors that show up in young children. One is animal cruelty, causing harm to animals without remorse. The reason this is important is this is somebody getting used to going through the steps of violence. And because it's usually very hard to just start hurting people. So you have to build yourself up to it. It's like jumping in a pool. You usually don't jump in at the deep end. You jump in the shallow end. So the person starts hurting cats, squirrels, animals like that, and then they work their way up to actually hurting people. The next part is fire setting, frequent or compulsive starting of fires. This is important because you get this. This is getting the person used to the spectacle of destruction. Once you're used to the spectacle of destruction, it's a lot easier to cause mayhem out in the world. The last one, and this one's very kind of controversial, but it's not particularly controversial to profilers, especially profilers that have worked on cases with the FBI and stuff. And that's bedwetting at an inappropriate age. So what that is particularly past the age where it is developmentally typical, often linked to emotional trauma or stress. So this is somebody that's maybe, 7, 8, 9, and they're bedwetting, but also another step forward is they're doing it on purpose. So they're violating social norms and they're doing it on purpose. And they're getting people used to, and they're getting themselves used to causing disruption in the life of others. So this is one of the ones that is kind of goes under the radar, but it's extremely important. Now, how this transitions into adulthood is this. Now you go from animal cruelty to target selection against other people. So this is repeatedly choosing vulnerable, empathetic, or high value individuals who ignore red flags. A great example of this is around 50% of all victims have alcohol in their systems or have some type of substance abuse in their systems. Predators usually look for vulnerable individuals, and alcohol is extremely linked to that. Another thing is grooming and control. So they're employing charm, mirroring, love bombing, or isolation tactic to establish emotional dominance. So a lot of times this is confused with charisma, but it's actually control. And as we get deeper in this slideshow, and when we start talking about some other investigative techniques in some of the later presentations, it's going to become more and more clear what is genuine interests and what is control and damaging. And the last part, this is how they live, is exploitation and exit. So they're using discarding or damaging the person, then moving on to a new target without remorse. So instead of looking at them like people, you have to look at this type of person like they're a locust. So they destroy what's in front of them and then they just move forward. So one of the things that often happens is we want closure from individuals like this. We're not going to get it. You're about as likely to get closure from a roach in your house. Next slide. So the psychopathy spectrum in relationships. One of the ways to look at this is watch the show Breaking Bad as an analyst. The show Breaking Bad had people that are all through the spectrum of psychopathy. You have somebody like Jesse who will hurt people under certain situations, all the way to Walter White and further. People that were okay with killing women and children if it furthered their means. So when we think of psychopathy and sociopathic behavior, a lot of times we get bogged up in the terms, but what we need to be aware of is people that are destructive to our lives and people that spend their time manipulating their environment and others for their personal gain without remorse. That's an easy, I think that's a much more fluent way to look at these people. Okay. Now, I get a lot of questions about love bombing. So we're going to end this right here. It's
Mhm.
not love bombing. Love bombing is a generic term that was really pushed by some psychologists. But what it actually is it's adult grooming behaviors.
Mhm.
Love bombing can seem to romanticize it, but no, what we're talking about is adult grooming behaviors. If you think of it like this, then it's a lot easier to notice this and for it to trigger your disgust centers in your heart and in your brain. Okay, let's go forward. I should have touched on that real quick. The reason I picked that photo is Leonardo DiCaprio, especially when I was in middle school. Can you go back to that real quick, Ryan?
Absolutely, man.
hmm Is Leonardo DiCaprio when I was in middle school, Titanic came out, and a lot of the women around me, whether they were adults or all the way to just kids in class, were all over and amazed by the charisma of Leonardo DiCaprio. Okay, Leonardo DiCaprio was on what, his 30th high profile relationship. So this is the danger of charisma. Not saying that this person is necessarily, a danger to others, but if you're looking for a long-term relationship, we have to get past charisma. People that lead with charisma, often there's not a stable individual behind that. And they just go from person to person to person. So we have to start seeing with our brains instead of just seeing with our eyes. Do you want to add to that, Ryan?
Absolutely. A lot of the times, the way that charisma plays out is that it makes the person very enjoyable to be around and to talk with and to, have fun with. And that's where we're saying that that is charisma. It's a tool, it's useful. But past that, if the person doesn't have an actual personality or they don't have goals that are near yours or they don't even have things that they believe in, they're not a real person, or maybe they are, but they don't even know how to portray that, then that's where the charisma ends. You can watch any movie you want. You can talk to anyone you want that doesn't make them right for you. And that's where we've really got to understand just because somebody might make it easy or fun to speak with them or be around them doesn't mean that we want to enter into a relationship with them. Because one of the reoccurring themes that we've talked about, that we've tried to stress is somebody who you're in a relationship with that you're committed to is one of the most dangerous people to you. Not because of that person is a bad person, but because they have simply the capability to harm you. And so, if you're going to be vulnerable, then we need to understand to whom should I be vulnerable and how do I decide who I'm going to allow myself to be vulnerable to. And that's where love bombing, or now what we're going to start calling it, is adult grooming, comes into play. That's what a lot of people try and do is use that charisma in order to get us to feel comfortable with them, simply because it's easier to talk to them to any other stranger. But we've got to get past that because that's where the first red flag should be thrown up is this person actually somebody I should be around and talking with? Or are they trying to lead me in with emotion so that I ignore all the warning signs that I've seen beforehand?
Absolutely. Just real quick, I see two questions and I can knock them out real quickly. So one question was that does psychopathy progress as they age? Yes, unless the parents or the environment or the person around them makes a huge change. So psychopathy, think of it like a sport.
Mhm.
So you have somebody that's 7 or 8 and they're playing basketball or football or soccer and they're getting better and better at that. So psychopathy is like that. You have somebody getting better and better at causing problems to others. This is extremely noticeable. It was extremely noticeable to me when I did investigative work in Chicago and like the school system in like East Side Detroit, West Side Detroit. I would see kids that were criminals in the making that were extremely dangerous to other people. And as of right now, the system is not set up to deal with kids like that. So you have somebody who's functionally 9 years old, but they're creating a criminal portfolio of somebody that's like 19. You have somebody that's technically a child, but they're stealing bikes. They're intimidating people. They're involved in systematic bullying. They're creating allies. They're getting better at that craft. So that's why this stuff has to be taken seriously, and especially as parents, we have to notice that in our children's lives and to make sure our child doesn't fall victim to this or become the perpetrator. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And-
Another real question, I just wanted to go through this real quick,
Mhm.
was examples of charisma. So, what often happens is people mistake attention for attraction. So somebody might look at you, smile at you, ask you all types of questions. They're an amazing listener. They take you on these amazing dates. Maybe this person might fly you out to Dubai. Or, sometimes what happens a lot in male relationships, this person really seems to get you and empathize with you. They really like you. But what they like is that you're giving them a playbook of how to manipulate you. This is, if you want to see how this is done in friendship relationships, there's a movie called The Cable Guy with Jim Carrey. And this is an example of charisma because you have the cable guy that found this lonely person that was looking for attention, was looking for friendship, and then he connected himself like a leech. But the cable guy, Jim Carrey, was extremely dangerous. So again, the movie The Cable Guy, great example of how not to bring people in your life. Were you gonna say something, Ryan?
Absolutely. Response to Marty about like when you try and dig deeper with somebody that uses charm or charisma and they ask, is there a disconnect? I'd say absolutely, because what you'll find, and I posted this in the comments if anyone wants to read, is the more questions you ask, the more you'll find that their story doesn't add up and they move towards the tactic of deflecting. So the reason why a lot of charismatic people are likable, are personable, is because they prey on our attention or liking people that focus on us. And so the more that you ask them questions and they realize they're being scrutinized or simply that you're noticing them, they want to keep deflecting that other places or say, take it easy, we're just having fun, or they want to keep deflecting that back onto, but let's focus on you. And so that's a very easy way to see whether that person has an ulterior motive or agenda or if there's anything really there. Sometimes charismatic people can be dangerous in that way. Sometimes they're just an empty person with good speaking skills. And so you realize they don't really have much to talk about. And that's another way to see it.
Absolutely. We'll talk more about this when we go through the entire presentation on grooming, because the grooming is called seesawing. So positive, negative. That hijacks the central nervous systems and it
Mhm.
starts sending endorphins to you for the wrong reason. So that's why it's extremely dangerous. Hot and cold relationships are not good. This is a sign that you are literally messing up your chemical balance in your brain.
Mhm.
All right, so predatory grooming. Snakes don't hiss anymore. They call you love babe bro. And this is true. What's happening is, especially since a lot of people don't have strong communities, and we don't have the knowledge of a strong community. So it used to be you would have a community where you have very wise people that were used to dealing with individuals like this. They might have not have said that this person's a sociopath, but they would say, "Oh, that family over there is a problem. Hey, that little boy over there is a problem. Hey, that little girl over there, I don't know about that." But we in general don't have that in most communities anymore. So now people are out here trying to fend for themselves, and they're fending for themselves a lot of times in the most dangerous place possible, which is online, where people can adopt different personas and be a mirror version of what you want them to be. So going forward, the behavior is designed to create false intimacy and emotional dependency. Once trust is established, control tactics like isolation and guilt tripping are introduced. Next, the process mimics predatory behavior seen in crimes against children. So again, we got to stop looking at grooming behaviors as just ending with children, because no, if it works and the psychopath or sociopath is used to getting success with this tactic throughout their life, they just move it right on to adulthood. Next is recognizing that this grooming arc idealization to control and keep can help people escape emotional traps. So once you realize that you're not in a relationship, you're in a predatory situation, then we can stop. It makes it a lot easier, especially with the clients I've dealt with, both as an investigator and now as a relationship coach. It's made it a lot easier to identify because I can usually see through a relationship within 5 to 10 minutes and start predicting things that have happened and will happen. Why? Because we're dealing with a predatory organism that has a predictable pattern of behavior. But once you understand the pattern, it's so much easier to stop it. And that way you can save a lot of money in therapy and all that other stuff. You could just say, hey, we ain't supposed to, this person is not going to change because the foundations of their character is corrupted. Next. So now this is extremely important. It's called victim selection patterns. Manipulative partners often seek empathetic, loyal, or emotionally wounded individuals. So what they do is they're like salespeople. A good salesperson is looking for your pain points. They're looking for the things out there that you desire that you don't currently have. A very good salesperson I know made a statement I never forgot. And what he did is he sold Mercedes Benz and BMWs to young men. And what he said is he went through the tactic and the process to make the man envy the man he believed he would look like if he had that car. And it was extremely successful to get young men in high, terrible loans, sometimes 27% loans, in order to get that car because they envied the man they thought they would become if they had that car. So when people are looking for their pain points, and then there is a financial, emotional, or sexual component to what they could possibly be wanting, look out, pay attention, because they could be leading you right down a trap. So, target. These characteristics make a person more susceptible to romantic exploitation. The attraction. The victimology helps profilers understand why someone is targeted, and the same applies in love. What happens a lot of times is people will be in and out of bad relationships. And the hardest part, and I know it's hard, I sometimes spend, 6 hours on one call with someone because it's so difficult for them to pull out their relationship history. But to but you can't glean what's happening in that person's life without knowing their relationship history. And so far too often, we just move from person to person, but the evaluation of the situation is our freedom. Now let's go to warning signs. Being overly praised early on, especially after sharing vulnerabilities, is a red flag. And especially if that other person is not disclosing their vulnerabilities. We're going to talk about reciprocity and I think about 3 weeks from now. And we'll start going over what is the basic process of rapport and reciprocity. So you can start noticing when you think you're building rapport with someone, but you're really not. And that's often a sign that what's happening is a predatory exchange and not an emotional exchange.
Mhm.
Next is the mindset. We need to shift the mindset from what's wrong with me to why I was targeted. And this is extremely empowering and is important because now we're not looking at ourselves as a fractured person. Just try to figure out why was I exploited for this? It's no different than having a conversation on the phone with someone, and next thing you know, what you talked about on the phone, you're getting an ad for that in your email, or you're getting an ad for that on your YouTube. Those cookies that we leave out leads people to think that we're vulnerable or that we're interested. So as we get better and better learning about the message we're sending out there, the better we get at being defensive and protective and bringing the right people in our life. All right, next slide. And this is where I
So
switch over to Ryan.
absolutely. Thank you, Terrence. And
Oh,
I wanted to touch a little bit on answering that question of why were we? Why was I targeted? And somebody may target us and set a trap because of something that's missing in our lives. So if we do not have solid, good, stable relationships around us. This doesn't always mean romantic. It could mean a good relationship with my parents or other family members, my siblings, a good relationship with friends around me, good mentors that I can talk to that I trust and I keep up to date with things about my life. Then that adult grooming of a huge amount of positivity, focusing on you, a ton of charisma at the beginning, if that's something that we don't already have, in the sense of I have a good relationship with my friend Terrance. Terrance and I talk every single day and have been for years. If somebody comes in and starts paying me a stupid amount of attention out of the blue, it's not going to feel like something special and magical and I've found a diamond in the rough and I've got to figure out who this person is. It's no, I have stable, healthy relationships around me, and this person isn't going to trick me into an emotional state of filling a void. And so if we have an innate loneliness within us, we're searching for that long-term partner. The moment that somebody may seem to fill that void and make us feel good, we get excited, right? Like we're thinking far in the future. One of humanity's uniqueness is the fact that we can think about the future and plan it and imagine what that could be. And so we tend to be drawn to that and going, is this person the one? Could this person be it? I want to know more about them. We get intrigued and interested. So it makes sense that when somebody starts to be extremely charismatic and pays attention, that we might want to fall into that trap. And the way they set it up is making us an unrealistic priority. And they do so by mimicking the motions of a committed relationship. So you might not know much about this person, but they're constantly talking to you and constantly trying to make you feel good about yourself instead of going through the motions of getting to know you, but letting you get to know them, which is what Terrance talked about regarding reciprocity. And when they make you an unrealistic priority, what I'm saying is that you haven't built a rapport with them or history with them. You don't know enough about them, yet you're their number one priority, or that it seems that way. This is a huge setup in order to get you emotionally connected to them, especially if you're not getting that from anybody else. So the catch is once you start becoming emotionally attached, then you start building the habit of making them in your life. So we're going through the motions of being in a committed relationship, but we don't yet have the foundations for it. And they get us because we're already emotionally attached. And whenever we're emotionally attached to something, our habits follow quite quickly and easily from our emotional attachments. And that's exactly how people get addicted to many things. We form in a strong emotional attachment, and then our decisions are driven by our emotions, and therefore our habits fall quickly. And the way we release ourselves from this trap is to understand what makes a true fulfilling relationship. And the more that we build deeper relationships with the people around us, whether they're our neighbors, our friends, our colleagues or coworkers, mentors that we have, family members, we start having those role models and guides in our life that give us an example of what we should be looking forward to. And when we can compare that with what we're getting, it makes it a little clearer to understand that there's something off here. Not only that, but having somebody you can talk to, uh, like Terrance or I, a professional or somebody you really trust that has the credibility to help you with this, can walk you through understanding, just like we are, how to spot the fakeness. And therefore, you can avoid it much earlier on in the process. So, with that being said, if we're looking for a long-term stable relationship, I don't, I think there are very few people who would say that I don't care about love and I don't want love to be a part of it. I can say certainly myself being married that love is a huge part of my marriage, and I'm very happy and thankful that I have that, and I wish that on anybody who's seeking it. But true love is not found; it is built. And what I mean by that is that a true connection to somebody requires understanding who they are and building up a wealth of experiences with them. And I'm going to touch a little bit on the next slide regarding this. But to understand the difference between love and infatuation, we need to understand that love is built. Infatuation is when we become obsessed with the idea of somebody, but we don't truly understand who they are. We don't have a big picture yet. And our attention to them doesn't even make sense at times. It's simply that we like them or we like something about them, but we can't put down on paper on why this person should be in our lives and how they fit into it, how they make us a better person. So love in a relationship, if we're building our relationship properly, compounds over time and it gets stronger. And it gets stronger not because we've just been with the person, but because we're overcoming obstacles. We're helping each other become better. We're actively working towards our shared goals. So we need to understand that early on, if we're going to have love as a part of our relationship, it has to be built. Effort needs to come from both sides. It has to make sense. And this is a huge part of reciprocity, which we'll be talking about in a future event. Now, when we are in that process, when we are in a relationship, when we've decided to commit to somebody who's also decided the same for us, in order to compound that love and have the relationship move forward, we have to understand that we cannot be stagnant because stagnation is death. In the animal kingdom, if you stand still in the face of danger, if you fall behind the herd, there is a huge percentage that you are going to become the victim. And in relationships, if either one of you is improving yourself, is trying to build a better life, is learning new skills, learning new hobbies, moving forward in their career, and they're looking at that from their partner as well, and the partner is stagnating, just like if we're on a walk, we're going on a walk to see a waterfall. If I'm walking at 10 miles an hour and you're walking at 2 miles an hour and then you take a nap and you start walking again, there's going to be a certain part where we're so far from each other that we can't even see each other. And that leads to a lack of understanding because it shows that we don't have the same priorities. And those priorities should be each other, but they don't seem to be each other anymore. And this later will bring contempt and discontent, and therefore a loss of respect on the partner. And once we get to losing respect for a partner, we're kind of entering the stage of no return. And so, no matter what, we need to pay attention to our relationships and understand when there's something wrong and understand what goes well and focus on what goes well and keep doing it and always check in with the other person and always look at bettering ourselves because if we check out mentally or emotionally and that person hasn't, eventually they'll notice and they will leave us because we haven't made them a priority in the same way they've made us. So once we get the relationship, we have the honor and the opportunity to have this for life. So we need to show ourselves that self-respect of enjoying what we have created and continue to put the effort in. So in order to build that foundation, there are several steps. And one of the most important that I talked about when I said love is built is understanding the difference between entertainment and happiness, because entertainment is cheap, but happiness is earned. I can laugh at any joke made. I can go on to any free website and see what's going on. I can watch YouTube all day and I can be entertained. But happiness is earned. Happiness is earned through shared goals and a shared struggle. So the way we can build that foundation is starting at looking at our shared goals with each other. Having shared goals brings a focus on teamwork and helping each other succeed. Because if our end goal is to be together in the same way, in the same manner, we've got to prioritize each other, not look at ourselves and say, what can I get this from this person? It's what can I give to them to help them achieve their goals? And that's fine because it's our shared goal. And it sets the stage for what meaningful work we can actually do together. Because relationships aren't really about negotiating. I believe that's not really a positive term or accurate for long-term stable relationship. It's more about collaborating. Because when we're talking about negotiation, it's we're going to meet in the middle and we're going to have to give up something. But collaboration is we're going to take the best of our ideas and we're going to combine them together. And it's okay if it wasn't exactly what we expected, as long as we're not giving up on our non-negotiables, the foundations that we have to have. Once we set the stage with our shared goals and our shared teamwork, now we need to build those memories by going through all of the obstacles that we need to go through in life to get to know each other, to support each other. We need to understand who that person is through their thought process, through their thought processes, what their character really is, and evaluating them through their actions. Terrance and I can talk for hours. We're really good at communicating with each other. We understand each other very well. Some people might not be as talkative, but there's still a way to understand who that person is. So, what is their character? What are their abilities? And when you understand that, you now know how to work together as a team and you can start sharing experiences. Now, shared experiences are what builds the memories for us to feel nostalgic about in the future. Without those shared experiences, the relationship tends to be a little bit empty. Um, and these memories that are so important for setting us the stage of a stable relationship include how we move past obstacles together. That when somebody is failing, how we help bring them up, how we encourage them, how we give them maybe tough love, but they know it's for the sake of making them better, not putting them into the ground. And so this includes both the struggle and the triumph after the struggle that we can celebrate together. And when I say happiness is earned, it's that triumph that we've earned through hard work together that we can now celebrate. So just like I cannot celebrate a garden in my backyard unless my wife and I have gone through the trouble of tilling the soil and planting the seeds and watering them and doing the research about the right plants to plant in the climate where I'm living and taking tender care of them and giving constant attention. I'm not going to have a garden that I can walk through and enjoy, where I can enjoy the smell of flowers and see the butterflies and the bees and maybe, rabbits running around. I'm not going to get that unless I put the work in. So we've got to earn that happiness. So that fun, that enjoyment is a reward of our efforts shared together, but it's not the starting point. We have to go through that in order to get to the end. And that right there is what builds loyalty and respect and consistency in relationships. That you're actually giving that effort to each other for the sake of that shared goal in the end. And you're taking the time to celebrate your triumphs, your wins in buying a new house, in getting a new job, in moving to a new country and figuring it out together, in starting a family, whatever that triumph may be. Taking the time to celebrate it is also as important. And the theme of all of this can be broken down to something very simple, which is your intention. Everything that we're doing here, that Terrance and I are trying to teach, is about the intention. Figuring out the intentions of the person in front of you who shows interest. Figuring out your own intentions, and each step of the way asking ourselves, why am I doing this? Is it still a good idea? How do I do this? Why do I think that the way I'm doing this is good? And if I'm in a relationship with somebody and I before I get married, why am I going to get married to this specific person? If I have an understanding of our shared goals, our teamwork, and our shared experiences, I actually have a very clear idea of why. And therefore, my intention in moving forward is pure and clear. And I can check somebody else's intentions and whether they're pure and clear. And having that intention and all of the evidence to back it up is what keeps relationships for life. Because when the going gets tough, when somebody makes a mistake, when life gets rough, if we don't have a very clear idea on why we're with each other, human nature is to go towards what is the easiest thing. The easiest thing is if I'm in pain now and I know a way to not be in pain and I know a way to not be in pain as soon as possible, I'm going to take the shortest path to not be in pain. And that is what can break relationships up so very quickly. And that happens when both parties do not have a clear intention on why they committed to the other person or why they're going to stay with them. And this is one of the biggest reasons that relationships fail because there was never a good intention or pure intention that matched with each other from the very beginning. Anything you wanted to add to that slide, Terrance, before we end our portion?
Not really. There's a lot of questions in here, and I can go through. We might be on for a while answering a lot of questions.
Mhm.
I got a lot of other like private messages asking if we've done other parts of this series and if they're recorded. Yep, they're on our YouTube channel.
Mhm.
I'll put a link in the description to the YouTube channel. And for people that want more of a personalized conversation, we have the Patreon in there as well. So there's a ton of questions in here. None of the questions are going to take more than maybe 30 seconds or a minute to like really break down.
Mhm.
So just to let everybody know, if you have a question and you want to ask more information to that question, that's what we're here for. So.
Absolutely. So, thank you so much for attending today. We really appreciate everyone coming out on a Saturday, especially the people who have been interacting with us either in the chat, private messages, on camera, asking questions. We really appreciate you. We always welcome feedback because this is a community. So, whatever our community needs is what we're going to focus on. So, please ask us your questions. Let us know what's going on. Interact with us. It's really what makes a community a community. And for anybody who is having a hard time applying what we're talking about, or perhaps you realized you might be a problematic person, or you need community support because you've gotten out of an extremely toxic relationship and you don't know where to go. Hopefully, this community is what will give you that push to stay on that path forward. So just some news. Terrence, take us away with the news.
Okay. So this what we covered right here is one of the chapters I finished in the book we're writing, me and Ryan. This was just a small portion of the chapter. There's way more information in it, and we're really trying to write the most comprehensive book ever made on how to choose a partner. So we're a lot of these events where we get the feedback, where you let us know what you're interested in. That helps me and Ryan and a couple other people behind the scene finish the book the right way. So if there's other topics that you're really interested in or topics that seem to get a lot of attention, those are the chapters of the book that we're going to fatten up. And if there's other chapters that, are not terribly interesting, those are the chapters we're going to slow down on. So as of right now, for anybody that hasn't been part, we launched the Patreon last week. We got 60 members. We're really happy about that. If the Patreon link, I'm going to go ahead and put it in the description. As we said before, it's free. I put a lot of my articles that I've written over the years on the Patreon, and it's available for people to comment and ask questions on. And that is what I do, especially almost every morning, is I reply to every question. If sometimes it might take me 24 to 48 hours, depending on what kind of clients I'm working with that day. But if you have specific questions or you want a more in-depth knowledge on how to apply criminal profiling and cognitive analysis to your relationship world or even to yourself, that's what the Patreon's here for. Also, the YouTube is up to 100 people. We appreciate every one of the YouTubers, the YouTube subscribers we have came directly from this community because this is just for this community, and we appreciate that. In closing, we're very proud to be the largest and most active relationship improvement community on Meetup. We're ranked number one in Michigan, and we're in the top 1% on the entire platform. So we appreciate everybody for helping us on this journey, and we're just getting started. We have a ton of content to post. We have a ton of workshops we want to do. Just let us know what you guys need, and we're here for that. Again, our group is less than 4 months old, and we've taken the spot from groups that have been here 16 years. So it just lets us know that the the world around us needs this information, and there's so many people dealing with the same problems and they're suffering in silence. So you can go ahead and take it away, Ryan.
That's it for today. You can stop the recording whenever you're ready, Terrence.